Welcome back. This channel exists because of your support. Subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get into the story. 3 weeks ago, my wife stopped talking to me, and it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to our marriage. Well, the best thing that happened right before I ended it. Let me explain. My wife Diane had perfected this particular form of psychological warfare over our 6 years together. The silent treatment, except she made it an art form. Not just refusing to speak, but making sure I saw her suffering. Soft crying in the bathroom with the door cracked open. Printed articles left strategically around our Hillcrest condo about emotional abandonment and narcissistic partners. She'd move through our space like a ghost haunting me with her disappointment. This time it started over something absurd. I mentioned wanting to attend an astrophotography workshop in Joshua Tree National Park. 3 days, Friday through Sunday. It was a specialized course I'd been eyeing for 2 years, ever since I realized I'd completely stopped taking photos. We were eating dinner when I brought it up. Homemade pasta, decent wine, normal Wednesday evening. There's this workshop in Joshua Tree next month, I said casually. Astrophotography techniques. I was thinking about signing up. Diane set down her fork with surgical precision. That should have been my first warning. So you want to leave me alone for an entire weekend? Her voice was cold, controlled. For cameras? I tried explaining. It wasn't about leaving her. It was about learning something new, reconnecting with a passion I'd abandoned. Just one weekend. It's always one thing, isn't it? She stood from the table, leaving her full plate. One weekend, one hobby, one excuse to check out of this marriage. Diane, it's not like that. Do whatever you want, Neil. You always do anyway. She walked to the bedroom and closed the door. Not a slam, just a quiet, controlled close that somehow felt worse. That was Wednesday evening, and it was the last time she spoke to me for 3 weeks. Day 1 turned into day 2. I apologized through the bedroom door that first night. No response. I slept on the couch, listening to her soft crying around 2 in the morning. She knew our condo's acoustics well enough to know I'd hear. Thursday morning, she'd already left when I woke up. She texted me a screenshot instead of words. An article titled, "When Your Partner Chooses Hobbies Over Connection." I replied with apologies. She read them. The receipts showed me that much. But nothing came back. I came home Thursday evening to find her cooking dinner for 1. She moved around our small kitchen like I didn't exist, reaching past me for ingredients, never making eye contact. On the counter sat a printed article, "The Emotional Abandonment of Photography Widows." I recognized this pattern. We'd been here before, maybe a dozen times over 6 years. She'd maintained silence for 3, maybe 5 days. I'd grovel, apologize, promise to do better. Eventually she'd forgive me, and we'd add whatever triggered the episode to the growing list of things I couldn't do anymore. By Friday, I'd already decided to cancel the workshop. I texted her, "What do I need to do?" She read it immediately. No reply. That evening, I left a note on the counter. I canceled it. Forfeited the $400 deposit. I'm sorry. Saturday morning, I found the note crumpled in the trash. She'd read it, but her face showed no change in expression. The silent treatment continued. That should have broken me. Historically, it would have. But something shifted in me that Monday morning. Monday morning, I woke up on the couch and realized she wasn't going to break her silence. This wasn't the usual 3 to 5 day punishment. She was committed to something longer, and I felt this strange sense of relief wash over me. The relief itself surprised me. Shouldn't I be devastated? Shouldn't I be doing everything possible to fix this? But when I actually examined what I was feeling, it wasn't devastation. It was peace. I made coffee the way I liked it, strong and black, without worrying about making too much noise with the grinder. Usually I'd use pre-ground to avoid waking her or triggering complaints about the sound. This morning, I ground fresh beans and didn't care. I ate breakfast without calculating whether my food choices would trigger commentary. Steel-cut oats with honey and almonds, something she'd criticized as taking too long, when we should be having quality morning time together. Quality morning time usually meant sitting in tense silence while she scrolled through her phone, occasionally sighing to indicate I should ask what was wrong. I got ready for work at my own pace, listening to a podcast she'd always complained was boring tech stuff. The house felt peaceful. That was the only word for it. The absence of her voice wasn't painful. It was liberating. At work that day, my colleague Rachel noticed something. We were reviewing code in a conference room when she asked, You seem distracted. Everything okay? Wife isn't speaking to me, I said, trying to sound concerned but probably failing. How long? 5 days now. Rachel looked up from her laptop. What did you do? Wanted to take a weekend photography workshop. Her expression shifted. That's it. Just a workshop? According to her, I'm abandoning her to play with cameras. Rachel studied me for a moment. Neil, has it occurred to you that might not be reasonable? It had actually, but hearing someone else say it made something click into place. That evening, I started thinking about my photography. Really thinking about it. I used to love it, spend hours every weekend chasing light, experimenting with composition. Diane had seemed supportive at first, even came along on shoots occasionally. But gradually, the comments started. Are you really buying another lens? That equipment is expensive. Another evening editing? I thought we could watch something together. Honey, those film cameras are just collecting dust. We need to declutter. I'd sold those film cameras about 14 months ago. A Pentax K1000 and a Nikon F3 that my dad had given me. I regretted it every time I thought about it, which I trained myself not to do. The following Tuesday, I went downtown during lunch. Just walking, clearing my head. I passed the San Diego Yacht Club where I used to crew on weekend races. Diane had always found reasons I couldn't go. Stomach issues. Every Saturday morning I had races scheduled. Migraines that required me to stay home. When I suggested she come along, she said my sailing friends excluded her, made her feel unwelcome. I quit the club 18 months ago. Told myself it was the mature thing to do, focusing on our relationship. Now I wondered if that was really my choice or just another thing she'd managed to eliminate. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I sat in our living room and put on a science fiction movie she'd always vetoed. Too dark, she'd say. Too violent. I watched the entire thing without anyone sighing, checking their phone with exaggerated frustration, or suggesting we watch something else. Friday rolled around, over a week into the silence. I noticed I was sleeping better on the couch than I had in our bed for months. No tension, no wondering what mood she'd wake up in, no careful calculations about whether my alarm time would disturb her. Saturday morning, I did something that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. I grabbed my DSLR camera from the closet where it had been gathering dust and drove to Balboa Park. The morning light was perfect, soft and golden, the kind of light photographers wait weeks to capture. I walked through the park to the Botanical Building, that iconic dome structure that's been photographed a million times, but still holds magic if you look at it right. I spent 3 hours there. 3 hours of just looking, seeing, capturing. I shot the building from different angles, played with reflections in the lily pond, caught light filtering through the lattice structure. My hands remembered the weight of the camera, the feel of the focus ring, the rhythm of composition and capture. No one was there to sigh and ask, "Are we done yet?" No one was checking their watch, shifting their weight from foot to foot with exaggerated impatience. No one was making comments about how we could be doing something actually meaningful with our Saturday morning. I remembered suddenly why I'd loved photography in the first place. It wasn't just about the technical aspects or even the final images. It was about seeing, really seeing, being present in a moment, finding beauty in light and shadow, solving visual puzzles. When I finally got back to the car, I realized I hadn't checked my phone once. Hadn't worried about whether I was taking too long. Hadn't felt that constant low-grade anxiety about whether this outing would lead to days of cold treatment. I came home energized, actually happy, and found Diane in the living room scrolling through her phone. She saw the camera around my neck. Her jaw tightened, her eyes narrowed, but she maintained her silence. She stood up without looking at me and walked to the bedroom, closing the door just a little too firmly to be casual. I sat down at my computer and transferred the photos. Looking at them on the bigger screen, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, pride. These were good, really good. My eye hadn't disappeared. It had just been buried under layers of criticism and discouragement. Sunday, I edited those photos. Diane walked past my home office multiple times, opening and closing cabinet doors louder than necessary, moving things around. I kept working. I'd forgotten how much I loved the whole creative process. The way problem-solving in Lightroom felt like meditation. That's when the thought hit me, sudden and clear. This silence isn't punishment anymore. This is showing me what life could be like. The following Monday, something switched in me. I stopped waiting for her forgiveness. I ordered Thai food for dinner, the kind she always refused because it was too spicy. I ate it at our dining table while watching photography tutorials on my laptop. She glared from the couch, but said nothing. Tuesday night, I drove to Fab Lab San Diego for the first time in 14 months. The maker meetup I used to attend religiously. Diane had always complained those nights conflicted with our time, even though she usually worked Tuesday evenings. My old friends looked surprised to see me. "Patterson, where the hell have you been?" "Life happened," I said, "but I'm back." I spent 3 hours working on a 3D printed mount for my camera equipment, staying until 10 p.m. There was no guilt, no rushing home, no text messages asking when I'd be back. I drove home feeling like myself for the first time in years. Wednesday, I decided to have a little fun with the situation. I stopped at Target and bought a pair of Bose noise-canceling headphones. The expensive ones, $329. I left them on the kitchen counter with the receipt and a note, "For peaceful silence. Thanks for the inspiration." I left for work before she woke up. When I came home that evening, the headphones were gone. The note remained on the counter, but she'd taken the headphones. I had to bite back a smile. She couldn't complain about my purchase without breaking her silence, so she just took them. Her own weapon had trapped her. Day 14, and I got an email from Roger, the commodore of my old sailing club. "We've missed you at races, Patterson. Diane let you out on parole?" The phrasing hit me. My friends knew. They'd watched me disappear and understood exactly why. I replied asking about rejoining. Roger responded within an hour. "Come crew this Saturday if you're free." I didn't ask Diane's permission. I didn't check our shared calendar for conflicts. I just replied, "I'll be there." That evening, I filled out the membership renewal paperwork and left it on the coffee table where she'd see it. Friday, I texted my sister Olivia. We hadn't hung out one-on-one in over a year. "Want to grab lunch tomorrow? I have a sailing race in the morning." Her response, "Who is this and what did you do with my brother?" We met at a cafe in Little Italy. Olivia noticed something immediately. "You look different," she said, studying me across the table. "Lighter, maybe? More like yourself." Diane's been giving me the silent treatment for 2 weeks. Olivia's eyebrows shot up. "And that's making you happier?" "It's making me remember who I was." "Before her, you mean?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, before her." Saturday morning, I was up at 5:30, loading sailing gear into my car. The early morning air was cool and damp, typical San Diego marine layer that would burn off by 10. I hadn't felt this kind of anticipation in almost 2 years. Diane was in the kitchen making coffee when I walked through with my duffel bag. She saw my boat shoes, the club jacket I hadn't worn in 18 months, the sailing gloves I'd thought about throwing away a dozen times. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, something that looked like genuine panic. She opened her mouth, and for a second I thought she'd break her silence right there. Then she closed it, lips pressed into a thin line, maintaining the silence. "I'll be back around 6, I said cheerfully, not asking permission, just stating a fact. I drove to Harbor Island, where the yacht club kept its boats. The smell of salt water and diesel fuel, the sound of halyards clanking against masts, the sight of early morning sailors preparing their vessels. I'd missed this more than I'd let myself realize. Roger saw me walking down the dock, and his face split into a huge grin. "Patterson, you actually came." Said I would. "Yeah, but saying and showing up are different things." "Good to see you, man." The crew welcomed me back like I'd never left. No awkward questions about where I'd been or why I'd disappeared. Just easy acceptance, the kind that comes from shared passion and mutual respect. Out on the water, everything came back naturally. The feel of the lines in my hands, the timing of tacks and jibes, reading wind shifts on the water's surface. We were racing in the club's weekly series, and our boat caught good air on the upwind legs. The sun burned through the fog around 9:30, warming the deck. Salt spray caught the light, creating momentary rainbows. I was trimming the jib, completely focused on telltales and wind angle, and realized I hadn't thought about Diane or our situation in 3 hours. This was what freedom felt like. Physical exertion, mental focus, being part of something that required your full attention. No emotional calculations, no walking on eggshells, no wondering if doing something you loved was going to cost you days of coldness and criticism. We finished second in our division. The crew was ecstatic, high-fiving and recounting close calls on the race course. Roger clapped me on the back. This is where you belong, man. We thought we lost you. You almost did, I said, and meant it. I came home around 6, sunburned and genuinely content. My shoulders ached from hauling lines. My hands had new blisters forming. I felt alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Diane was on the couch, her laptop open but clearly not working. She'd been waiting, watching for me. She saw my face, saw how happy I was, and I watched panic flash across her features. This wasn't part of her script. The silent treatment was supposed to make me miserable, desperate for her forgiveness. Instead, I was thriving. She almost spoke. I could see her struggling with it, her mouth opening slightly, words forming. But she caught herself, pressed her lips together, and looked away. Sunday, I pushed further. I ordered an 850 lens online, plus enrolled in an 8-week photography course. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 7 to 9 p.m. I printed the schedule and put it on our refrigerator. Diane saw it, and her face went crimson. She grabbed her phone and started texting furiously. Her sister Michelle, probably, or her mother, looking for validation, for someone to tell her I was being unreasonable. That night, I made dinner exactly how I liked it. Steak, medium rare, with sides she'd normally critique as too heavy or too indulgent. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, and realized something profound. I wasn't trying to survive until she forgave me anymore. I was thriving during her punishment. Day 18, I called a family law attorney during my lunch break. A woman named Evelyn Kim that Rachel had recommended. Her office was in a high-rise downtown, with views of the bay that probably cost her firm a fortune in rent. Evelyn was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with an air of someone who'd seen every variation of human relationship dysfunction and remained unflappable through all of it. Rachel gave me the basics, she said, gesturing for me to sit. But tell me in your own words what's going on. I explained. 6 years together, 2 years married. Started with a photography workshop that triggered 3 weeks of silent treatment. But really, it was about 6 years of systematic isolation and control. She took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. The condo you're living in? I bought it 8 years ago, 2 years before I met Diane. It's only in my name. Current value? About $680,000. Mortgage balance is $310. Her pen moved quickly. That's significant equity. What about vehicles? Both in my name. Mine I bought before we met. Hers I bought as a gift about a year ago. Employment. I'm a software engineer in Sorrento Valley. Salary around $145. She does social media consulting part-time, brings in maybe $28,000 a year. Evelyn looked up from her notes. And household financial contributions? That's where it gets interesting. I went through our accounts last night. Over 2 years of marriage, she's contributed maybe 15% to household expenses. The rest has been my income. What does she spend her income on? According to the credit card statements, primarily personal expenses. Boutique fitness classes, juice cleanses, shopping. Things she categorizes as business expenses, but aren't really. Evelyn sat back in her chair, tapping her pen against her notepad. Let me make sure I understand the full picture. You own significant premarital assets. You earn 5 times what she does. You contribute 85% of household expenses. And she exercises substantial control over your social life, hobbies, and family relationships. That's accurate. This is a common pattern, Neil. Financial dependency creating leverage for emotional control. The person being supported feels entitled to dictate terms because they've positioned themselves as essential to the relationship's emotional health. Something about hearing it stated so clinically made it more real. How long does a divorce take in California? Minimum 6 months from filing to finalization. It's a mandatory waiting period. With your situation being relatively straightforward, no children, clear separate property, significant income disparity, the process should be smooth. The biggest question is spousal support. Would I have to pay her alimony? Possibly, but the marriage is short. Generally, support duration is half the length of the marriage for marriages under 10 years. You'd be looking at 12 months maximum. And given her earning capacity and your respective contributions, it wouldn't be substantial. What about the condo? That's your separate property. She has no claim to it, or its appreciation. Same with your premarital savings. Community property only applies to assets acquired during marriage and income earned during marriage, though you have a strong case that your separate property stayed separate. I felt tension I hadn't realized I was carrying start to release. Can you have papers ready by Thursday? Evelyn studied me for a moment. That's fast. Are you certain? I've had 3 weeks to think about it. I'm certain. Then yes, I can have an initial petition ready. We'll need to discuss strategy, service procedures, temporary arrangements. But if you're ready to move forward, we can start immediately. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in years, control over my own life. Not the illusion of control that comes from successfully navigating someone else's moods, but actual agency over my own decisions. That evening, I went through our finances in detail. Really looked at them for the first time since I'd stopped asking questions to avoid fights. Our joint checking account showed exactly what Evelyn had said. My direct deposits covered 85% of our expenses. Diane's contributions were minimal, and her business expenses on our credit card were actually SoulCycle classes, juice cleanses, and Nordstrom shopping trips. I opened a new checking account at a different bank and transferred $25,000 from my savings. Then I updated my direct deposit, 60% to the new account, 40% to our joint account. Enough to cover our actual bills and her reasonable expenses. But I was establishing independence. Day 19, Tuesday evening at FabLab, my friend Dennis asked how my return to sailing went. Great, actually. Best day I've had in a long time. How's Diane handling all this? I paused. We're having issues. Dennis nodded slowly. Man, I'm glad you're figuring it out. Figuring what out? That she was isolating you. We all saw it. Couldn't really say anything. You stopped showing up, stopped responding to texts. Changed completely. The validation hurt and helped simultaneously. The whole maker community noticed? We talked about it. We're worried about you. That evening, I took one more calculated risk. I printed information about California divorce petitions from the court's website. Left the pages on my home office desk along with Evelyn Kim's business card. Not hidden, not displayed, just visible if anyone happened to walk past. Diane came into the office around 9, claiming she needed to get something. Her eyes landed on the papers. She went pale, picking up the business card with shaking hands. She stared at me, mouth opening as if to speak. Then she closed it, turned, and left quickly. I could hear her pacing in the bedroom, the muffled sound of a phone call. Her voice was agitated, though I couldn't make out words. Day 20, Wednesday, I drove to La Mesa to visit my dad at his woodshop. We hadn't had a real conversation in 6 months. He looked up from the table he was refinishing and did a double take. You look different, son. Better. Diane and I are having problems. My dad set down his sanding block. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm also not surprised. What do you mean? Neil, you disappeared. Stopped calling, stopped visiting Sunday dinners. Stopped being yourself. Diane said you were emotionally unavailable. Toxic masculinity, she called it. Raymond actually laughed. I've been available every Sunday for 34 years. You weren't. And I knew why. We talked for 3 hours. About how he'd watched me change, how he'd wanted to say something but knew I'd have to figure it out myself. How my sister had been heartbroken when I stopped making time for her. How my whole family had noticed but felt helpless. Whatever you're doing now, he said as I left, keep doing it. You look like my son again. That night, I called Evelyn Kim. Draw up the papers. I want to move forward. I spent the evening organizing documents, preparing for what I knew was coming. Financial records, timeline of events, photos showing the progression of my isolation. Not for revenge, but for clarity. For protection. Diane walked past my office repeatedly, clearly anxious about what I was doing. But she couldn't ask. Her silence was her prison now. Day 21 was Thursday. The day her punishment was supposed to end with me groveling. Instead, I came home from work with a manila envelope from Evelyn's office. I'd packed an overnight bag that morning, knowing I wouldn't be sleeping at the condo regardless of how this conversation went. Diane was in the living room, dressed carefully. She'd been waiting, clearly preparing for this moment. When I walked in, she stood. 3 weeks, Neil. Her voice was controlled fury. 3 weeks of you acting like this is all some joke. First words in 21 days. I placed the envelope on the coffee table between us. Actually, it's been enlightening. I've been waiting for you to realize what you did wrong. Do you know what it's like? Watching your husband choose everything else over you. The cameras, the sailing, that maker space, now your family again. She was listing my freedoms like they were crimes. How's the space working out? I gestured to the envelope. Because I've been using it productively. She picked up the envelope, read the return address. Kim and Associates, Family Law. Her face changed completely. What is this? Divorce petition. And 60-day notice to vacate the condo. The papers slipped from her hands. This is insane. Over one fight? One workshop? It's not about the workshop. Then what? What did I do that was so terrible? I sat down, keeping my voice calm. You eliminated my photography, my sailing, my maker community, my family, my friends. I supported you. I just wanted us to focus on our marriage. You wanted me to have no life outside of managing your emotions. Sailing club, remember? You had mysterious stomach issues every single Saturday I had races. Maker meetup on Tuesday nights was taking away from our time, even though you worked those evenings. Photography equipment was expensive clutter. My family was toxic. My friends were bad influences. You're twisting everything. I had legitimate concerns. Name one hobby I have that you didn't eventually eliminate. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Nothing came out. Exactly, I said. We can fix this. Her voice shifted to desperation. Real therapy, better communication, whatever you want. Every time you've forgiven me before, it came with new restrictions. Photography gone. Sailing gone. Makerspace gone. Family minimized. Friends eliminated. I turned down a promotion 8 months ago because you cried about feeling abandoned. Do you remember that? She was crying now, but these were panicked tears. This is insane. You're throwing away our marriage. I'm ending it. There's a difference. Where am I supposed to go? You have 60 days to find a place. The condo is mine, purchased before our marriage. That's all documented in the papers. I can't afford a place on my own. I pulled out my laptop, turned it toward her. This is our financial breakdown. Over 2 years of marriage, you contributed about $15,000 to household expenses. I contributed over $145,000, not counting the condo equity. Your business expenses were actually SoulCycle, press juicery, and shopping. She stared at the spreadsheet. That's not fair. I contributed to this marriage. By doing what? Monitoring my friendships? Critiquing my hobbies? Using therapy language every time I wanted basic autonomy? This is because of your sailing friends. Your sister. They never liked me. They poisoned you. They cared enough to miss me when I disappeared. You cared enough to make sure I disappeared. I stood up. The conversation was over. The papers explained everything. Read them. I'm staying at my dad's for a few days. But I will be back. This is my home. She was standing too, shaking. You planned this. During the silent treatment. While I was. Her voice broke. I was punishing you, and you were leaving me. The punishment was actually a gift, I said, picking up my overnight bag. It gave me 21 days to remember who I was before I spent 6 years managing your feelings. I walked to the door, then turned back. Thank you, by the way, for the silence. I'd never thought quiet could be this relaxing. The next week was a masterclass in boundary setting. Diane texted long paragraphs cycling through emotions. Anger, bargaining, promises to change. I responded once. Read the papers. Further communication through attorneys, please. She tried enlisting her sister Michelle for an intervention. I came home Sunday afternoon to pack more things and found them both waiting. You're abandoning her when she needs you most. Michelle started before I'd even put my bag down. Did she tell you why I'm leaving? Because you're having a midlife crisis about hobbies. I wanted to attend a photography workshop. She gave me 3 weeks of silent treatment for it. Over 6 years, she eliminated every friendship, every hobby, every family connection I had. That's documented. I showed Michelle the financial breakdown on my laptop. Her face changed. She contributed 15% financially while controlling 100% of my life. That's not a partnership. That's not a marriage. Diane tried to interrupt, but I was done engaging. I took what I needed and left. By day 25, Diane shifted tactics. Love bombing. Flowers delivered to my office. Text messages saying she'd made reservations at Addison, an expensive restaurant in Del March. I'm sorry. I love you. Please talk to me. I didn't respond. I went to sailing practice, attended my photography course, had dinner with my sister. For the first time in years, I was making plans without checking with anyone, without calculating emotional consequences. Day 27 brought a fake emergency. Text message, something's wrong, I need you. I called our neighbor, asked her to check. Diane's fine, she reported. I saw her leave for yoga an hour ago. I blocked Diane's number and communicated only by email. By day 30, she'd retained an attorney. I received a professional email asking about logistics. I responded equally professionally. 60 days from notice, which gave her 40 days remaining. Joint account would stay active for her expenses. Her car would be transferred to her name. I'd even pay her moving costs, not from guilt, but from wanting a clean ending. That Saturday, my boat won our division's final race of the season. The team celebrated at a bar in Pacific Beach, and Roger asked me to photograph the crew for the club newsletter. Good to have our photographer back, he said, grinning. I edited those photos Sunday morning in my condo. Diane was staying at Michelle's for the weekend. The place felt lighter with her gone. I printed my favorite shot, a sailboat at golden hour with the crew celebrating, and hung it in the living room, right where she'd never allowed me to display my work because it was clutter. Sunday morning, I woke before dawn and drove to Balboa Park. I wanted to catch sunrise at the Botanical Building. The early light was perfect, soft, and warm, and I was completely present, not worried about anything except composition and exposure. I ran into Olivia jogging past. "You look happy," she said, stopping to catch her breath. "I am. For the first time in 6 years, I'm looking forward to tomorrow." "What changed?" She gave me 3 weeks of silence to think about what I'd done wrong. I spent it remembering who I was before I met her. And turns out I like that person. I'm getting him back. My phone buzzed. Text from Roger asking if I could crew next weekend. I replied immediately, "I'll be there." For the first time in 6 years, I didn't need to ask permission. I was just living. I thought about the irony of it all while walking back to my condo. Diane's weapon had become my liberation. The silent treatment was supposed to make me desperate for her voice, compliant and apologetic. Instead, it taught me how much better life sounded without it. Her punishment was meant to remind me of everything I'd lose without her approval. But those 21 days of quiet showed me everything I'd already lost by seeking it. I'd spent 6 years shrinking myself to fit into her vision of what I should be. Photography abandoned. Sailing quit. Maker projects collecting dust. Family kept at arm's length. Friends slowly eliminated. All because keeping peace was easier than fighting for myself. The silence gave me something she never intended: perspective. Without her voice constantly reframing my choices as selfishness, I could see the pattern clearly. Each hobby eliminated, each friendship ended, each family gathering skipped. All in the name of focusing on us, which really meant focusing on managing her emotions. Walking through Hillcrest with my camera bag over my shoulder, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of constant calculation was gone. No more wondering if this outing would trigger the silent treatment. No more checking in to avoid being accused of choosing something over her. No more apologizing for wanting a life outside of our marriage. My phone buzzed again. Text from Dennis at the Maker Lab. "You coming Tuesday?" "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. The sunset was perfect that evening, golden light painting the neighborhood in warm tones. I photographed it from the roof deck of my condo, the space I'd barely used in 2 years because she didn't like going up there. 21 days ago, I'd been living in a cage of my own acceptance. Too tired to fight, too conditioned to question, too afraid of the silent treatment to risk any boundary. 21 days of silence later, I was free. Not because I'd become someone different, but because I'd remembered who I was. The person who loved photography, who found peace on the water, who created things with his hands. The person who had a family he loved and friends who made him laugh. The person who had ambitions and interests beyond managing someone else's emotional state. Diane's silent treatment was supposed to be my punishment. Instead, it was my permission slip. Permission to stop apologizing for having a life. Permission to stop accepting that wanting basic autonomy made me selfish. Permission to leave a relationship that had slowly, methodically stripped away everything that made me who I was. I looked at the photo I'd just taken on my camera's display. Perfect exposure, compelling composition, genuine artistry. I thought I'd lost that creative eye. Turns out I'd just stopped looking. The quiet had taught me that silence isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's peace. Sometimes it's clarity. Sometimes it's the sound of freedom finding its voice. And my voice, after 6 years of careful modulation to avoid setting her off, was finally saying what it needed to say. I'm done. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, Subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.
그러니까 중국이 북한 땅 먹는 순간, 우리한테 진짜 크나큰 그거가 돼. 진짜 좆대요. 뉴스를 보는 게 아니라 여러분들 생각을 해봐. 내가 뉴스를 많이 봐서 이런 얘기를 하는 게 아니라 딱 봐도 척하면 척이잖아. 북한은 우리한테 위협이 안 돼요. 북한도 우리가 없으면 안 돼. 우리가 막 소 주고 쌀 주고 그러니까 북한 사람들을 먹고 사는 건데, 북한은 우리랑 싸우면 손해라니까. 그리고 이제 중국은 우리를 먹으려고 하잖아. 자꾸 뭐 우리나라 부동산을 사거나 뭐 우리나라에서 자꾸 뭐 하려고 하잖아. 우리나라 기술력 빼오려고 하고. 중국이 적이지 북한이 적이 아니라니까. 밥 뭐 먹을까요? 그러니까 북한 우리랑 전쟁 못 한다니까. 무서워서라 전쟁 못 해. 우리나라가 북한한테 지원해 주는 게 얼만데.